Hello Unreal Engine games developers. In our last video we finished building our desert driving game, but there are always bugs in any game, and in today's video we'll go through those and fix them. Let's get started. Firstly, congratulations. If you've followed my playlist in the description below, you now have a finished desert driving game which you have deployed on your local network. Now, this video is really to fix bugs and issues in the game. Thankfully, they're mainly cosmetic, but I still wanted to fix them so we got a nice, clean code base that we can move forward with. So the first issue I noticed was in the area of sounds. So if you go to your sounds folder, and this is an oversight on my part. When I did the tutorial on sounds, we set up this desert ambient sound, but if you open it up, I forgot to set it to loop. So you need to set looping here. And the issue was that after about 50 seconds or so, when it should have looped, it will just stop completely. So you'll lose your desert background sound. So set that to looping and it'll loop continuously throughout the game. Let's say that's the first issue. The second issue is also in sounds, and you may or may not have had this depending on whether you followed my instructions exactly in the sounds tutorial. But when I created the sound, in fact, let me just show you. If I go to the pickup truck where we attach the engine noise, so go to your vehicle variety pack, blueprints pickup, and open up the BP pickup. So we've got this engine noise component, and when I created this, I accidentally created it in the spring arm, and I then moved it back out into the mesh, but it retained the location of where it was in the spring arm. And what that means is the sound pans around as you move the camera around. I'll show you the issue that I've got. So if I go into play mode, if I then move around, sound goes from left to right, and I want it centered on my vehicle. So the way to solve that is just to zero out the location for the engine noise. If you created it in the mesh, yours probably will be zero already, so you won't have an issue. So zero, and now when I play the game, the engine will stay centered as I move around the vehicle. So that was one item I wanted to fix there in the sounds. The other item, it's just really just making sure that things are neat and tidy. My part, if you go to the sound queue for this engine and open it up, one thing I noticed, I'm not sure why they do this, but the default when you create a new queue is to make the volume multiplier 0.75, and my view is that it should be unity, should be 1. That means if you're moving from playing a wave to a sound cue, the volume will remain the same. So I would say change that to make it consistent and save that. Okay, so those first 3 bugs are all to do with sound. The next one I want to show you is just an issue with UI capture at the beginning of the game. Let me actually show you the issue first, and then we'll fix it. So if I go to the project and launch the game, in fact, hang on, before I do that, let's go to let's load the main menu map and go into your level blueprint, and just make sure that you've connected your set resolution console command. When we built the game, we disconnected this so it was full screen. It just makes it easier to move around in the development environment. So connect this, and then go to your folder, find your project, and launch the game. And this again is a very subtle issue. If you click on the text box, you're getting the window focus, but then you have to click again to focus onto the actual player name. And then when we go into the game, you still have the window, the mouse cursor here until you click. It's a minor thing, but it'd be nice if that mouse cursor disappeared straight away. So Alt F4 to come out, and we'll fix these problems. So the way to do this is go to your main menu level, and we'll need to open up the player controller for the main menu. So if you find the main menu player controller, which is in your player folder. In fact, let me just shut these down so we've got it a bit cleaner. So open up your main menu player controller. And what we want to do is, after we show the mouse cursor, we want to set the input mode to UI only. And we need to put in our player controller. And now we can also specify a widget that we can focus on. I want to focus on the player name so that it goes straight to, when you start up the game, you can just type the player name straight away. So after we've created our widget, we can take the reference to the main menu widget. If you do get, and we can get text player name, which is our text entry box, and we can make this the widget we focus on. So we've made it UI only, and we focus straight away on the player name. Now, because we've set it as UI only, we need to reset it to game only when we start the game. So compile and save. Go back to your player folder and open up the main BP My Player controller, which is the player controller for the game. And at the end of the begin play section, just set the input mode to game only. So effectively we're going back from UI to game, and we'll have to put in a reference to the player controller, which is self, because we're in the player controller blueprint here. So this will go from UI in the main menu and then set it to game only. Compile and save. And now if we go back to our game and launch it, I can type in a name straight away without even clicking on the window, host game, and as soon as I'm in the game, there's no mouse cursor and I can move around straight away and start moving. So that's the UI issue fixed. Again, cosmetic issue. Let's now, as a final thing, look at just cleaning up a couple of things in the project's files. So you notice on the content folder here, we still have a lot of old content from the very first tutorial we did, where we used the third-person mannequin, but we're not using it anymore. So all of these folders, geometry, I'm pressing Control here to set the mannequin, third person blueprint, they're no longer required by the game, and they'll just cause confusion later on when you come in and want to edit or add features to the game. So we want to delete them. Now, big warning here, whenever you delete anything in an Unreal Engine project, make sure you've backed up the project first. There's always a risk that A, you delete an item that you need in the game, and B, sometimes if you delete things which are referenced in memory, it causes crashes, and you can't always recover the project afterwards. So do make sure that you've backed up first. That being said, let's delete these. So I'm right clicking, and somewhere here there is delete. And it says, do I want to delete 4 folders? And we'll click delete here, and they've gone. And we've now got a much cleaner content window now, which just shows items that we're using in the game. And the final thing I want to do, which again is to do with kind of having a cleaner project, I wanted to, you may remember this from when we packaged. If I go into the project settings and I go to the packaging, section, drag down a bit until you find the area that says where you create cook-only maps and create compressed cook packages. I want to tick this box, exclude editor content when cooking, because generally speaking you don't want to add any editor content and inflate your file size. So I'll select this. The problem was that we did actually use one piece of editor content in the game, which was the camera shutter sound when we went through a gate. And the easiest way to fix that is to actually copy that gate shutter sound into our sounds folder and rename it so that it's now part of the game rather than the editor content. So if we go to our player controller, you might still have it open, BP My Player Controller. If you go into the score handling section, and in particular the play sound here, if you browse, you'll find the camera shutter somewhere within the editor content. And here we have the camera shutter sound, but I want to store this in the, or a copy of this in my sounds folder. So drag up the files here so you see your sounds folder, and then let's drag this in to the sounds folder, and we want to copy. Make sure you don't move it because we don't want to delete the engine sound. Now if we go to that sound, we've got the camera shutter sound. Let's rename it. So F2 to rename, and we'll call it gate scoring. Okay, leave that selected. Now go back to your player controller and click this Use Asset Browser selection. So this will now use the gate scoring sound in your folder. And don't forget to compile and save. Now when you build your project the next time, it won't have any editor content in it, and it will use the gate scoring sound from the sounds level. So it's a cleaner way of dealing with the project. Okay, our last bug to finish today concerns session creation. So if you go to your UI folder and open up the main menu, if you go into the graph section, I've put comments around the host and join game just to make it a bit clearer which blueprint elements are doing what. And this was, I said, a subtle one. When I created the session, I connected the output of create session to open level, but I didn't connect the successful execution item to open level. So if the create session failed, I would have still have opened the level, and then other people would have been trying to join and scratching their heads as to why they couldn't join me in the level. So let's disconnect this, and where we should connect it is on success. So only open the level for the host if you have a successful session, and then other people can join. So compile and save, and obviously now you need to go and rebuild your game with all these bugs fixed. So I hope you found today's session informative, and stay tuned because we'll be doing a few other videos on this series in the coming weeks just to create some add-ons and some refinements. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.